We're going to talk tonight about, all week, we're going to talk about winning. We're going to follow the theme, and I've chosen tonight to talk about winning in your decisions. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about winning over anger. Tuesday night, we're going to talk about winning over temptation. And then the last night, we're going to talk about winning at your relationships. But we're starting tonight with decisions because, quite frankly, you either win with your decisions or you lose with them. And how you do with that determines so much about how your life goes. We are faced with more decisions today than we ever have been in our life. It's because of the kind of lifestyle and technology we have now. But a multiple choice culture is what we now live in. And the problem is that sometimes a seemingly insignificant or even trivial decision has a major life-changing impact on your life. Sometimes little tiny decisions like a giant door swinging on a small hinge completely changes the entire direction of your life. I'm going to give you an example from my own life to start with. But I want you to be thinking about examples in your life of how one little decision that you made framed a great deal of your life. I was 19 years old and I was a sophomore at David Lipscomb University. And I was a secondary education major. I had never remotely considered being a minister. My whole life I'd never even thought about it. I'd always thought I was going to be a coach. I was already an assistant coach on the Ezell Harding junior high football team there at 19. And that was what I wanted to do. One afternoon, Lipscomb was playing their arch rival Belmont, crosstown arch rival Belmont, in a baseball game at Belmont. And one of my friends said, "Why don't we go?" And I said, "All right, let's just go." I'd never been to Belmont University in my life. We went to Belmont University that afternoon for the game, and my friend left early. So I'm sitting there by myself, 3 rows from the top bleachers. When a guy on the top bleacher named Steve Marsh was talking to some other friends sitting with him, and he said, "I'm supposed to be the summer youth minister out at a church called Rivergate Church of Christ out in Goodlettsville, north of Nashville." I didn't even know where it was. And he said, "I'm supposed to be the summer youth minister there, and something has come up, and I can't do it." And somebody said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "They're begging me to find a person to do it." And he said, "So I'm just looking for anybody. I'm talking to anybody at Lipscomb who might have some desire to do it." And one of the people sitting next to him said, pointed down, I'm listening to this conversation, and pointed down to me like 2 rows in front of him and said, "Why don't you ask him?" So he sidled his way down next to me, and he said, "I'm going to not have to turn down this opportunity that I was supposed to take." And he said, "It's just for 3 months. It's just June, July, and August. They're trying to get through." At that point, Nashville was doing a area-wide campaign called Let Freedom Ring for Christ. It was the bicentennial, and Let Freedom Ring for Christ. And he said, "They just want a summer youth minister. And I'm going to have to turn it down, but they want me to help get somebody." And they said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, I don't know, probably not, but I would listen to them." He called one of the elders there named Odell Braswell, who that next Wednesday night drove out to my home church and sat out in the parking lot with me. The irony of that is he later became one of our winter members here at McGregor for about a decade. And he sat in the car with me that night and said, "Look, no pressure whatsoever. All you have to do is just come out for 3 months. And that's all you got to do. Then you go back to the rest of your life, go back to college, go back to what you want to do." So I said, "All right, I'll do that." I went out there to be the 3-month youth minister. The kids hated my guts. I was really hard-nosed, hard style. What little youth ministry they had was all centered around bowling parties and pizza parties, and that wasn't what I was about. And they hated me. This is the honest to God truth. If you don't believe this, ask Diane. They got together a petition to take to the elders and sign to get rid of me. I found it and signed it. I wanted out of there as bad as they wanted to get rid of me. She signed it. My wife of 47 years signed it. So to say it got off to a rocky start would be an understatement, to say the least. But then over the next few weeks, something clicked. At the end of the 3-month period, they said, why don't you stay another 3 months? On a part-time, and I was in school at the same time. And they said, why don't you stay another 3 months? And then in December, they said, why don't you stay another 3 months? And then in the summer, they said, why don't you just come full-time in the summer while you're in school? And then they finally said, why don't you become full-time? I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. I didn't intend it. It all happened because of one seemingly minor, insignificant decision to go to a college baseball game on a weekday afternoon. There, I found my wife of 47 years. I've looked back many times. What would have happened if I had not gone to that college baseball game? I'm convinced, I'm absolutely convinced, I would have been coaching the last 50 years. I would not have been preaching. I hope I would have been a faithful Christian and in the church, and I believe that I would have been, but I can't tell you that for sure. I can't tell you that for an absolute certainty. One seemingly small decision changed my entire life, changed what I would do as my career for my entire life, determined who I would marry. And you know, we make these kinds of seemingly small decisions all the time. While I was a youth minister there, we had a young man in the youth group called Tom Gibson. I've told this story and I wrote about it in one of my books. Tom also had a decision to make one night. He was starting to run with the wrong crowd. I had counseled him about it. His parents had asked me to counsel him more about it. I did everything I could with him. And then one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, his mother called me and said, I need you to come over here as quickly as possible. The police just came to the door. They have taken Tom to the police station. I said, what happened? He had made a seemingly insignificant decision the night before to go with the wrong group of friends, and he knew they were the wrong group of friends. They had decided a little after midnight to rob a convenience store out on Shackle Island Road in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He said, I don't want to do it. He did the right thing. He said, drop me off back at my car. They did. But when they robbed the convenience store to get back at the chicken, they left a little evidence of him. He went to juvenile detention facility for 2 years. 2 seemingly insignificant decisions. Both completely altered lives. I did a little research a couple of weeks ago in preparation for this lesson on some really bad decisions in history. Sam Phillips sold a small recording company to RCE Records in 1955 for $35,000. He thought it was a good decision. It included an exclusive contract with a young man nobody really had ever heard of at that time named Elvis Presley, and wound up owning all the rights to all of Elvis Presley's music for more than a decade. He unknowingly forfeited royalties on more than 1 billion records. Bad decision. Did you know that Tom Selleck was the first choice to be Indiana Jones, and he turned it down? Harrison Ford got it instead. Bad decision. In 1936, these two men, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, sold the rights to Superman for $65 each. The people they sold it to's families are still getting royalties in the hundreds of thousands every year. In 1975, a guy, I won't call his name, but his initials are Randy Simmons, bought this car. This was a Ford Pinto, and it has been rated the worst car ever built in the United States of America. Has anybody else ever owned one? Raise your hand. See, you made a stupid decision too. True story. A South African hang gliding instructor saw a beautiful woman sunbathing on a roof just below his flight pattern. He decided to go down a little further on the flight and make an obscene gesture at her. The woman's husband saw him, went in and got a submachine gun and blasted the Birdman out of the sky. Bad decision. A thief in Boston attempted to steal 2 live Maine lobsters, and he decided to stick them down his pants. Really, really bad decision. And then there was this high school girl that told Bill Gates, "It's either me or the computer, make your choice." Bad, bad decision. So what's the key to making wise decisions? Let's think about what the book of wisdom says. If you want better insight and discernment and are searching for them as you would for lost money or hidden treasure, then wisdom will be given you and knowledge of God himself, and you will soon learn the importance of reverence for the Lord and of trusting him. Did you catch that? If you are seeking for wisdom in making decisions, as you would seeking lost money or hidden treasure, you will find it. That's what that text says. Verses 7 through 9 say, he grants good sense to the godly, his saints. Did you see that? If you want to have good sense to make good decisions, he'll grant it to you and be your shield, protecting you and guarding you on the pathway. He shows how to distinguish right from wrong. Watch that. Read that last line aloud with me, starting with how, please. How to find the right decision every time. One more time. How to find the right. We don't have to go into this blind. We don't. We don't have to go into life with its many decisions blind. He will help us find the right decision. So if you want to make good decisions, listen to God. How do we do that? I'm going to give you some simple tests to be reminded of. You might want to jot these down. If you don't, it'll be on YouTube and Facebook till the end of time anyway. So anyway, the first test is the flawless test. The ideal test is it flawless? That means, is it in harmony with God's word? What I'm about to do, does God say it's okay to do? And always. That's the first test you want to look at. What does God have to say about it? In life, you are going to have to choose what will be your ultimate authority. And it really boils down to 2 choices. It really does. Your decision-making processes in life will be based upon God's word or the world. The wisdom, the views, the morality, the education, and the choices of the world. One of the 2 it's going to boil down to. Either the word of God or the world. And we know this from the Bible, Satan is the god of this world. So, the word or the world, what God says or what other people say. If you base your life on popular opinion what's currently the in thing to do, you're always going to be out of date because that keeps changing every single day. What used to be in yesterday will not be what's true tomorrow. The opinions of the world change constantly. And you will always, if that's the way you make decisions, be making decisions from a shifting cultural foundation. If you base your life simply on popular culture, political correctness, opinion polls, what the world thinks, you will constantly be on shifting ground because it's always changing. On the other hand, if you base your life on God's word, it never changes. I am the Lord, I do not change. The book of Malachi says, truth is always true. If God said something was wrong 5,000 years ago, then it is wrong today. It'll be wrong 5,000 years from now. And I don't care what opinion polls say. And I don't care what the world says. If God says it's wrong, it's wrong. It always has been. It always will be. And if God says it's right, it is right. So you can either build your life on a shaky foundation that's constantly changing the opinions of the world, or you can build your life on what God says never changes, which gives you a solid foundation while everything else in the whole world is up in the air for grabs. God has set the universe up with certain laws. We know that. They are physical laws. We know these, like the law of gravity, a law of the universe. What goes up comes back down. And there are also moral laws that God has given us. And there are spiritual laws that God has given us. And God built the universe around these laws, not because he's a capricious God who just arbitrarily wants to control all the details of our life. He set it up that way because he made us in his image and he knows what's best for us. And life is easier when we follow his word. When you cooperate with the principles in the universe, you succeed. If you reject or rebel or disobey God's principles, he's not hurt. You are hurt. You don't ever break God's laws. They break you. It's amazing to me. You hear somebody say, if I go up on top of a building and jump off, I have broken the laws of gravity. No, you haven't broken the law of gravity. You have proven the law of gravity. And you are going to go down and you are going to pay the price. I don't ever break God's law. They break me. And so the first question in any decision making, if you want to win at decisions, is what does God say about it? It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter if 99% of the people are doing it. If God says no, I'm not going to do it. About a month ago or so, my air conditioning unit started acting up on my house. It was in the middle of the night and I got up. It was 2 or 3 in the morning, and I figured what it was. It was a clogged drain outside. And so I went outside, went around the corner of my house, and was going to check the drain, and then clean it the next day. Most of you have done that. Or actually, I'm usually going to call somebody to come clean it the next day. But anyway, I have done it before. But I went around there, and I didn't take a flashlight with me. And I immediately realized I am just stumbling in the darkness. I turned around immediately and went back in the house, got a couple of flashlights and went out, and voila, suddenly I can see. Your life is like that. All of us at some time or another feel like we are just stumbling around in the dark, trying to find the right way, trying to find the right decision. And the Bible says that the Word is a lamp for our feet and a light on our path. Test number one for making good decisions. Test number one, the flawless or the ideal test. Test number two is the integrity test. Very important. You want to ask yourself the question, would I want everybody to know about this decision that I'm making? And if not, why not? If you're making a decision and you worry that other people are going to find out about this decision you're making, it's most likely an indication this is not a good decision. Because bad decisions lead to secrets, and those kind of secrets lead to pain in our life. Again, the wise man said, people with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. We've all seen how this happens. You're about to make a bad choice. You know it's a bad choice. You know it's probably not the choice you should be making, but before you make the choice, here's what you rationalize to yourself. And I say you rationalize to yourself. It's usually Satan whispering in your ear, rationalizing it to you. Oh, go ahead. Nobody will ever know. And then you do it. You make the choice. You make the decision. You take the act. And what immediately starts to happen? Somebody's going to find out. Now, which is it? Nobody is ever going to know, or somebody is going to find out for sure. There's where bad decisions take you and leave you. The test of integrity is that your public life and your private life match up. What's in your heart and what's in your life are the same thing. That your walk and your talk, what you say and what you do, are in harmony with one another. And the truth is, when it comes to integrity, even if you can fool everybody else, you cannot fool yourself. And if you violate your own conscience, you have to pay for it. I've been there and done that. I know that. Remember, James, the brother of our Lord, said, it is sin to know what you ought to do and then not to do it. So one of the questions to ask yourself when you're making decisions is, can I do this with a clear conscience? Because every time you violate your conscience, it is a big mistake. Sometimes we think this way. We know we're about to make a bad decision, or we know we're about to do the wrong thing, and we know we shouldn't do it, but this thought comes to our mind. Even though it's wrong, even though I'm doing the wrong thing, I'm still going to go ahead and do what I want to do because I know God will forgive me. Because after all, the Bible says over and over again that God is a forgiving God. What kind of fool do you think God is? That we can go ahead and make a decision to do something that He says is wrong and then think that it's not going to have any kind of consequences whatsoever in our life. That's the very reason He doesn't want us to make that decision. Because it is going to have consequences in our life. There are consequences to every decision. Every bad decision leaves the possibility of leaving behind a scar in your life. Over and over and over again for 50 years, I have seen as a preacher people who have made decisions, knew they were wrong, and found that the biblical law and the natural law, that is, whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. That's both the biblical law and the natural law. Happened once again in their life. Because that's the way it works in life. Now, does this mean God does not forgive us for the wrong things we do? Of course he forgives us. He's a forgiving and gracious God. But that forgiveness does not free us from the pain of our choice and the consequences of our decision. I wish I could have so many conversations back with young men and young women who were married and had 2 or 3 children, and one of them was deciding to have an affair and maybe end the marriage, and I've tried my best to counsel them and tell them what the consequences of those choices will be down the road, and then they have to find out themselves the hard way, usually through consequences that have been passed on to their children. So important. You can be forgiven, but you may still have the scars and the pain and the regrets. You can be forgiven, but there's still a tiny part of that broken relationship because you made that decision. And there still may be consequences from those choices. Here's a third question to ask yourself. We'll call it the advancement test. And that simply is, will this help me or hurt me? Ultimately, will this be good for me, or will this be bad for me? Will this make me a better person or a worse person? Paul stated it this way. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Notice the incredible freedom we have here as Christians. Everything is allowed, but not everything is beneficial. And not everything builds you up and is constructive. He's saying some things are not necessarily wrong, they're just not necessary at all. And they will hinder you on your path to God. It doesn't always have to be a matter between good and bad, it's a matter between good and what's best. Most of the choices that we make in life, most of the decisions that we make in life are not really between good and evil. You don't get up in the morning and say, shall I read my Bible and pray today, or shall I become an international terrorist? Nobody gets up in the morning and says that. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, should I contact a Christian friend today and encourage him, or should I become a drug addict? Nobody says that. The issue is what's really best in your life. A lot of things aren't necessarily wrong. They're morally neutral maybe even, but they're just not necessary. So, if you want to make good decisions, don't go to the lowest possible common denominator of thinking. Don't go to the lowest standard available. Go to the highest standard and ask, what will make me a better person? That, my friends, is the advancement test. And I realize I'm treading on thin ice right now, but I'm going to say it anyway. Some of us, our lives revolve around certain TV shows. And we're wasting our life. Some of us know more about fictional characters on TV than we know about Peter and Paul and the disciples. And even Jesus. We do. We spend hours and hours and hours in a world that does not exist, that does not make you a better person in any way, shape, or form. We know who's dating who and who went to what show with whom and what they wore and on and on and on. And these people actually live very shallow lives, and you're investing your life following them and reading about them instead of making your life matter. We're following people on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter that we know full well we don't even respect. And we know all about them. How's that advancing you? How is that advancing you? I know some of you guys right now are kind of glancing over at your girls and saying, sick 'em, Randy, sick 'em. Okay, you couch potatoes. From the moment you get home on Friday until Monday morning, your eyes are glued on sports. You know more about Stephen A. Smith than you know about your wife. and you're wasting your life. And I know that's true because I just saw a bunch of you guys chuckle. Many activities in life are morally neutral. They're not right or wrong. They're just not helpful. They're unnecessary. The question may not actually be when making decisions with them, is there anything wrong with it? The question is, are they making me a better person? Test number 4. Very important. The freedom test. The freedom test. You say, it's the next verse from what we just read, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. And watch this. And even though I'm allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything. So you ask yourself this question: could this decision I'm making become addicting to me? Is there any way it could begin to control and dominate my life? No matter how fun something is, if it begins to dominate your life and it becomes an addiction, it's a bad decision. And it will hurt you. You say, well, I can drink whatever I want to drink. Maybe you can. Romans certainly seems to suggest that there's not a sin in any alcohol use. The sin is in alcohol abuse and in drunkenness. 1 Corinthians 6 seems to say that. Ephesians seems to say that. So maybe you can. But maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one out of every 8.5 that the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta says will become an addict because of it. Or maybe it will become such a crutch in your life that you will not be able to live without it. I'm going to decide not to do anything that dominates my life. I won't let anything master me, consume me, or control my life. Now, we're about to face way bigger issues than the drinking issue has ever been. We're about to face them right now. We are facing them right now with the opioid problem and the fentanyl problem. We're facing them right now. But I've got to get rid of this pain. I've got to get rid of this pain. No, I'm telling you, you will be adding to physical pain, mental, emotional addiction, and maybe death. And then there's another addiction that is starting to scare the living daylights out of me. And that is the addiction our kids have to their phones. I still have the same rule about my phone that I had when I got my first one 25 years ago. It never walks in these doors with me. It's fine in the car. Nobody should need me so desperately that they cannot go for an hour of worship or church without contacting me. If they do, they got a problem. Not me. They got a problem. And I watch our kids and I really worry about how this is rewiring their brains. And we know already it is not good for them. It's an addiction that is making them slaves. And I'm saying kids, sometimes it's adults. And why is this so important? Because whatever dominates your life eventually becomes your real God. You know, the Big Ten, God's 10 Commandments, the very first one, God said, you shall what? Have no other gods before me. And why is that the first one? Because he knew how easy that could be for us. He knew how easy it would be for us to become addicted to our earthly idols. There's a lot of things you can get addicted to. You can get addicted to your work. You can get addicted to sex. There are a lot of sex addicts. You can get addicted to money. You can certainly get addicted to the internet, hour after hour on the internet. You can get addicted to the phone, as I've already mentioned, for sure. Today, did you know there are over 2,000 classified addictions that are making slaves of us rather than giving us freedom? Now you say, how do you know if you've fallen into that kind of an addiction and if that is making a problems for you in your decision-making processes? How do you know if something started to dominate your life? Let me ask you a simple question that, if you're honest, will answer that. What do you think about most of the time? What can you not wait to get to do? That's the way you'll answer that question. What is it? Because I'm telling you, if you're talking about an alcohol addict, they can't wait to get to that alcohol. If you're talking about a drug addict, they can't wait to get to that drug. If you're talking about a sex addict, they think all day and they can't wait to get to whatever relieves the pressure in them. If you're thinking about a money addict, they can't wait to make that next dollar. If you're thinking about a phone addict, they can't wait to make that next contact or respond to that next like or love. What do you think about? So much. And when you're alone and when you're relaxed, what do you find yourself thinking about again and again and again? It's hard for us to admit these things that may dominate our lives. It's very difficult for us to be honest with ourselves about this. And in fact, right now in your mind, some of you are thinking, that is not what I'm addicted to. It couldn't be that. And that's what it probably is. That's probably the very thing you're struggling with. Paul said, I've decided to not let anything control. Wow, did I do that? My thumb must have gone down. Paul said, I've decided I'm not going to allow anything to make me a slave to it. Well, since you've already seen it, let's go on to the next text. That is the influence test. Will it harm somebody else? Ooh. Now it's not just about will it harm me. Will it harm somebody else? One of the biggest mistakes we make in life is we forget how much our influence and action affects others around us. Every day, particularly if you're a parent, every day you're tempted to make decisions that may be okay for you if it were just you, but could have a devastating effect on others around you. And so you need to think about the freedom test. Will it harm other people? Now, let me tell you why that's so hard. That is so counterculture. I mean, that's the total opposite of everything the world or our culture teaches us. It says, take care of yourself. Think of yourself only. Think about what you need, what your desires are. But the truth is, God expects you to think about more than just yourself. He expects you to think about the people around you as well. Paul said, each of us will give a personal account of God. So let's stop condemning each other and decide instead to live in such a way that you will not cause another believer to stumble or fall. You might not like hearing this, but whether you like it or not, you are being watched all the time. You're being watched. Now, that has a different meaning today than what it would have had 20 years ago. If I would have said that, it would have been true 20 years ago, but today you literally are being watched. You don't go anywhere without a camera trained on you. You can't go in our building without a camera trained on you. And we're Christians. It's like we're trying to catch each other thieving one another. So we're really not. We're doing it for protection and for security purposes, but still, you are being watched by other people. There is no such thing anymore as all it affects is me. That's a lie. Everything you do has an effect on somebody, either directly or indirectly, because we are all in this boat called humanity, and we're in it together. And if I decide to drill a hole in the bottom of the boat, it's going to affect you. All my life, I have had to be aware of this, because I started leading singing in my home church when I was 16 years old, and I was a youth minister when I was 19 years old. That's way too young for any of that. So since that moment, all my life, I have had to deal with this as a particular issue and not problem, because it's a blessing in a sense, but I've had to be aware of this. I'll never forget, I was 16 or 17 years old. I was still in high school in my home church, Radnor in Nashville, Tennessee, and a woman walked up to me named Gladys McPherson, and she said, "You better watch what you do. Everything you do, you better watch." And I was scared, actually, because, it was an adult confronting you. And I didn't even say why. I didn't say even why. And she said, "My little John," and he was about 13 years old, "is watching everything you do. And he just admires you. And he wants to be you and do what you do. He is watching every single thing you do." Those of you who are parents should be especially aware that little eyes are always watching you. So you need to be careful with what you say and how you say it, because you are not just influencing your life, but the next generation. We don't live in a vacuum. People are watching you and are influenced by you. Because you know that your children are watching you, you don't call in sick when you're not. And them hear that, because you're telling them it's okay to lie. You're teaching them situational ethics right there, and bad ones at that. You don't bring supplies home that you stole from the office for your own personal benefit. You don't brag in front of your kids about all the ways you're ripping off Uncle Sam in taxes. When you're sitting there watching TV and they're in the room also, there are certain things that you just flip past that maybe you could easily handle, but there are little eyes in the room that can't handle it and shouldn't handle it, and may learn words or concepts they are too young to consider. The influence question when making decisions is, hey, is what I'm doing going to hurt somebody else? And not just our family, but other people are watching us too. There are going to be times in life when you get cruddy service in a restaurant, if you could even call it that. Maybe it's even way worse than that. And you're tempted to say something mean or nasty to the employee, to the server, to the manager. And you want to say something smart aleck and be rude. Don't do it, because sure enough, somebody is going to be behind you in line or sitting at the table next to you who sat behind you in church last week. And they're a non-believer. And they're searching, and they're saying, if that's what a Christian is, forget it. You can't just live your life the way you want to if you're a Christian. You have to be aware of the way it affects other people. We who are strong must be considerate of those who are sensitive about things like this. We must not just please ourselves. We should help others do what is right and build them up in the Lord. In other words, let me translate that and put it in modern vernacular for you. Mature people limit their freedom for the benefit of others. Every really good, mature leader, teacher, coach, preacher I have ever been around, somebody worth following, limits their freedom for the benefit of others. Immature people don't. They just want what they want. They don't think about what it does to somebody else. They don't really care whether it hurts somebody else. Why do you do that as a Christian? Because you're afraid of what other people think, or because you're trying to put on a show in front of them? No. Of course not. You do it out of love. You do it because it is the loving thing to do. You do it because that's what Jesus would have done. The mark of maturity is that as you consider your decisions, you consider also how it is going to affect all other people around you, not just yourself. If you want to make the best use of your life, if you want your life to count and make an impact in life, you've got to get control of your time. Because it is absolutely true, time is life. And if you don't manage your time, you're just not going to go very far. I'm running short, so I get to the last test because I want to make sure everybody understands this one. And we'll just call it the investment test. Is what I'm making a decision about the best use of my life? Or is it even the best use of my time? Paul told the church at Ephesus, be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. Listen, everybody in here has one thing in common. Every single person in here has one thing in common. We all have the exact same amount of time every week, 168 hours. I don't have 172. You don't have 154. We all have 168 hours. The greatest success and the worst failure that you've ever known in your whole life had the same amount of time you do. It's what you do with it. And time is way more important in life than money, because you can always make more money. Nobody can ever make more time. Don't waste it. Don't waste it. You have a certain number of days that you've been allotted in this world, and if you blow them, you've blown it. So if you waste time, you're wasting life. If you kill time, you are committing suicide. You really are. Your own. So you have to stop and say when making a decision, is this the best use of my life? If you never understand why you're here, what you're doing here, how God has gifted you to do what you're supposed to be doing here, if you never understand your life's purpose, if you never figure out why God has put you on earth, you have absolute no basis whatsoever for your decisions. You're making them all willy-nilly. You're coasting through life, cruising, skimming, surfing, with no overarching objective. If you don't know where you're headed. If you don't know where you're headed, any road will do. Any road will get you there. So let's close tonight by doing a little self-evaluation right now. Let's get a little personal. How are you doing on the flawless or the ideal test? Are you being tempted to do something that is contrary to God's word? You know you shouldn't do it, but you're thinking about doing it anyway. Are you making decisions based on God's word or the values of the world? The integrity test. Would I want everybody to know? And if not, why not? Are you exactly the same person you appear to be? Or are you living a double life? Saint and sinner, Sunday person and weekday person. The advancement test. Are you filling your mind with the best material, starting with the Word of God? Maybe you ought to put a little governor on it and not let everything into it that you've been letting into it. The freedom test. What is out of control in your life? The schedule, your temper, your words, your habits. It can be all kinds of things that are out of control. What dominates your thinking most of the time? What is in your life that you say, oh, I could stop at any time? Why don't you try for a few days and let's just see? What's the hurt? I've told people with alcohol problems that for years. Okay, you tell me you're not an alcoholic, don't drink for the next week. We will know. We will know based on how you're doing at the end of a week, if you make it to there. The influence test. Have you ever considered how your actions may be hurting other people and you're not just thinking about the big I or the big me? And the investment test. Are you so busy that you don't have time for the most important things in life? Are you investing your time in things that ultimately are not going to matter to a hill of beans? Or are you investing your time in things that are not only going to matter 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but they're going to matter 1,000,000 years from now and beyond? In a crowd this size, there's no doubt in my mind there are many people here who are haunted by the secrets of bad decisions they've made. Sometimes they're known. Other people know about them. Most likely, other people don't know. You may be sitting there the only one who does know. And the shame that you feel about that, and the guilt, and the regret, and the remorse, and even as I talk about it, it comes flooding into your mind, and you think, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't done that. What does Jesus have to say to you? Jesus would say to you, I don't care what you've done in the past, what stupid choices or decisions you've made in the past. You matter to me enough that I gave my one and only Son for you. If it had only been you, you are valuable to me. We've all made stupid decisions in our life, really dumb decisions that have been devastating to ourselves as well as other people. And Jesus would say this to you tonight: I love you, I will forgive you, I can restore you, I can even sometimes reverse some of the damage you have brought on your lives and the lives of other people with your stupid decisions and choices. But I want you to know I will always welcome you back with open arms. Apply these 6 tests when you are making decisions and choices, and you will find, guaranteed, that they make a difference in your life. Not because I said so, I'm a peon, but because God's Word says so. And we're going to all week this week talk about how exactly to win in life. A lot of people have an anger problem, or a lot of people live with somebody who has an anger problem. And that's why I have chosen tomorrow night to talk about winning over anger.